The night of the Governor Awards 2025 was supposed to be glamorous, a celebration of talent, success, and Hollywood prestige. Cameras flashed like strobe lights. The red carpet stretched endlessly under the bright marquee lights, and every attendee knew this was the kind of evening that could define a reputation for years to come. But by the time the main event began, whispers had already started circulating. Whispers of tension, rivalry, and a confrontation that no one expected. And right in the center of it all stood Meghan Markle, the so-called entitled princess, navigating the complicated crosshairs of Hollywood and royalty. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine for a moment walking into a room filled with some of the most powerful and influential people in the world: actors, directors, producers, social media moguls, and even royalty, knowing that every eye is on you. The pressure is palpable. Every smile is scrutinized, every movement analyzed. Meghan had mastered this dance before, yes, but this night would test her in ways she never anticipated. She was confident, poised, and impeccably dressed, radiating the kind of elegance that the world expected from a duchess. But as the night unfolded, it would become painfully clear that no amount of poise or planning could prepare her for what was about to happen. Jennifer Lopez, the Queen of Hollywood, had also arrived, and as soon as she stepped onto the red carpet, the atmosphere shifted. The air seemed to crackle with electricity. J.Lo had a presence that was impossible to ignore, commanding, magnetic, and unapologetically bold. She wasn't just attending the awards, she was taking over the room. Cameras pivoted toward her as if drawn by an invisible force, and even seasoned publicists found themselves momentarily awestruck. But the real drama began when her gaze landed on Meghan. In that brief, loaded moment, the stage was set for a showdown that would reverberate across social media, tabloids, and every conversation in Hollywood for weeks. Let's take a step back and understand why this story matters now. It's not just about a celebrity clash or a royal misstep. It's about power, perception, and how two very different worlds, Hollywood and royalty, collide in a single, unforgettable moment. Meghan Markle has been a figure of fascination for years, her every move dissected, analyzed, and debated. Jennifer Lopez, meanwhile, is the epitome of self-made Hollywood royalty, commanding respect through talent, charisma, and an unwavering presence. When these two forces collide, the consequences aren't just personal, they're public, viral, and inescapable. The evening started innocuously enough. Meghan arrived in a custom gown that sparkled under the event lights, a soft smile playing on her lips. She posed for the cameras, waved gracefully, and exuded confidence. But behind that smile, there was tension. Staff whispered urgently into her ear. A stylist adjusted her dress for the third time. Her publicist whispered reminders of protocols and talking points. Every little detail mattered, and every small misstep could be catastrophic. Meanwhile, Jennifer Lopez entered with the kind of swagger that only she could pull off. Her entrance was cinematic, every movement deliberate. The media descended upon her like a swarm of moths to a flame, capturing every second. Celebrities turned their heads, some in admiration, some in surprise, as she navigated the crowd with ease. And then, like a masterful performer, she spotted Meghan. That's when the tension became undeniable. The air shifted in the room, a subtle but unmistakable charge of electricity. And in that charged moment, Meghan knew this wasn't going to be just another awards ceremony. As the evening progressed, Meghan attempted to blend in, to navigate the intricate social choreography that high-profile events demand. But Jennifer's presence was pervasive, and her energy undeniable. Whispers floated around the room. Gossip from Hollywood insiders, speculation from journalists, and sharp eyes taking in every detail. Who would speak first? Who would make the first move? The tension was a slow burn, and everyone in the room could feel it. Then came the moment that would be remembered for years. A seemingly innocent exchange between the two women turned into a public spectacle. Words were spoken, gestures made, and suddenly Meghan was on the receiving end of what could only be described as a humiliation broadcast in real time. Cameras captured every reaction, from Meghan's stunned pause to the subtle smirks of those nearby. The room held its collective breath. Social media exploded with clips and GIFs, each one dissecting the encounter from 1,000 angles. But the humiliation didn't end with a single comment or action. Behind the scenes, chaos unfolded. Meghan's team scrambled, trying to contain the fallout, while Jennifer's team moved with precision, knowing exactly how to maximize the impact. A few whispered conversations, a couple of strategic smiles, and suddenly the narrative was clear. Jennifer Lopez had claimed the upper hand. And Meghan? She was left navigating a storm she hadn't anticipated, her every response watched and critiqued. As the night continued, the ripple effects became impossible to ignore. Every celebrity present had an opinion. Social media buzzed with commentary, speculation, and memes. And amidst all this, Meghan had to make choices, publicly, privately, and strategically. Every move mattered, because in a room where power, fame, and influence intersect, a single misstep could define your reputation forever. By now, the stage was set for the drama to unfold fully. Meghan had faced scrutiny before, but never quite like this. Never in a room where Hollywood royalty and actual royalty collided in such a spectacular and public way. And as the awards ceremony carried on, with speeches, applause, and camera flashes, one question loomed over everyone. How would Meghan respond? And just when the night seemed to settle, just when the glitz and glamour distracted everyone momentarily, something happened that would change the trajectory of the evening entirely. Something that no one saw coming, and something that would ensure the story of the Governor Awards 2025 would be talked about for months. Cameras were rolling, witnesses were watching, and the next move, whether intentional or not, would seal the moment in Hollywood history. The tension, the glamour, the whispered rivalries, all of it was leading to a single, unforgettable climax. And while the world only caught glimpses, behind every smile, every glance, and every subtle gesture, there was a story that no one had told. A story of power, of rivalry, of public humiliation, and of a princess who thought she could navigate Hollywood with ease, until Jennifer Lopez changed the rules of the game entirely. The night started like any other high-profile Hollywood Awards event. The city of Los Angeles was alive with anticipation, the streets outside the Governor Awards 2025 glittering with the headlights of limousines and the occasional flash of paparazzi cameras. For most attendees, this was just another opportunity to see and be seen, to network, to sip champagne, and to claim the ever-elusive status of relevance. But for Meghan Markle, this night was loaded with extra weight, a collision of two worlds she had never fully mastered, royalty and Hollywood. Imagine stepping out of a car, the pavement reflecting the flashing lights, every camera shutter a drumbeat, every step scrutinized. Meghan was in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, custom designed to hug her figure while maintaining the elegance befitting a former duchess. Her hair was perfectly styled, cascading in soft waves, and her makeup struck the delicate balance between flawless and approachable. She looked every inch the entitled princess tabloids loved to dissect. But behind that polished exterior, nerves coursed through her veins. This night was about more than glamour. It was a test of perception, of influence, and of survival in a room where power, fame, and ego collided. The venue itself was nothing short of spectacular. A historic building with sweeping staircases, grand chandeliers, and intricate gold leaf detailing. It was a fitting stage for Hollywood's most extravagant rituals of recognition. Inside, A-listers mingled with directors, producers, and media moguls, creating a web of influence that was both intoxicating and intimidating. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with designer perfume, while champagne corks popped in the background, punctuating conversations filled with subtle power plays and sly comparisons. Backstage, Meghan's team worked frantically to ensure that every detail was perfect. Stylists fussed over the hem of her gown, publicists whispered reminders about talking points, and security made careful note of every approaching camera lens. There was a palpable tension, not just from the preparations themselves, but from the knowledge that Jennifer Lopez was expected to attend. Jlo's presence was legendary, commanding, and inevitable. For years, she had been Hollywood royalty, and the mere hint of her arrival sent waves of excitement through the room. Meghan knew this. and she knew that when J.Lo entered, nothing would be ordinary. Jennifer's entrance, when it finally came, was cinematic. Limousines glided to a stop, and she stepped out in a gown that seemed sculpted by light itself, her aura radiating confidence and command. Cameras pivoted instantly, journalists whispered excitedly, and even seasoned celebrities paused mid-conversation to admire her poise. She had a presence that didn't just fill a room, it dominated it. And as she navigated the crowd, her eyes swept the gathering like a spotlight, assessing, acknowledging, and, most importantly, claiming her territory. Meanwhile, Meghan took her place on the red carpet, offering smiles, gentle waves, and the kind of polished demeanor expected of a former member of the royal family. But even with every detail meticulously planned, there was an undercurrent of anxiety. Meghan knew that the night wasn't just about appearances. It was about influence, public perception, and the delicate art of diplomacy in a room full of individuals who were masters of self-promotion. Every step, every glance, every pause was a potential headline waiting to happen. The media frenzy outside the venue was nearly as intense as the activity inside. Paparazzi jockeyed for positions, cameras clicking ceaselessly, capturing every moment of anticipation. The social media landscape had already exploded with predictions and speculations about who would dominate the night. Fans and critics alike were divided. Some rooting for Meghan, eager to see her navigate this Hollywood territory. Others rooting for J.Lo, confident that she would assert herself and leave her mark. The narrative was building, tension escalating, with every passing moment contributing to the sense that something monumental was about to unfold. Inside, the mingling began. Celebrities exchanged polite smiles, whispered congratulations, and subtle compliments. Conversations were laced with strategy, alliances, and the constant awareness of being observed. Meghan moved through the crowd with practiced ease, but it was clear that some eyes followed her with curiosity tinged with judgment. Jennifer, on the other hand, seemed to glide effortlessly, commanding attention without overt effort, her presence a quiet assertion of dominance. The contrast between the two women couldn't have been more stark, and it didn't go unnoticed by those in attendance. Every awards show has its rituals, the staged photographs, the champagne toasts, the strategic conversations. But the Governor Awards had its own unique energy. The anticipation of celebrity encounters, the unspoken competitions, and the subtle power dynamics made every interaction charged with meaning. Meghan understood this, but even with her experience in the royal spotlight, navigating Hollywood's social minefield required a different skill set. It was a world driven by charisma, perception, and influence, an environment where a single misstep could be magnified into a viral sensation. As the evening's schedule unfolded, Meghan found herself scanning the crowd, aware of every movement, every whisper, every camera angle. Her publicist whispered reminders. Keep smiles natural, maintain poise, engage with those who matter. But there was an unmistakable tension, an undercurrent that no amount of preparation could erase. The arrival of Jennifer Lopez added an entirely new dimension to the night's unfolding drama. Every glance, every nod, every subtle gesture between the two women became a conversation in itself, observed by photographers, reporters, and fellow celebrities. And then, there was the backstage chatter. Whispers of past encounters, rumors of rivalries, and speculation about who would win the night created an atmosphere thick with anticipation. Meghan's team was alert, ensuring that every camera shot was controlled, every step carefully measured. Jennifer's team, of course, had their own playbook, one designed to maximize impact, to subtly assert dominance without overt aggression. In a room full of A-listers, everyone was calculating, observing, and preparing for the moment when the tension would erupt into something unmistakable. The red carpet interactions were just the beginning. Inside, the real drama was simmering. Celebrities were making subtle observations, exchanging whispered comments, and speculating about what would happen when the night's program moved from photographs and greetings to the main event. Meghan could feel the weight of every gaze, the unspoken judgments, the expectations that came with being both a royal figure and a celebrity. Jennifer, on the other hand, moved with the confidence of someone who had mastered the art of commanding attention, making every step and glance feel intentional, deliberate, and powerful. By the time the ceremony itself began, the tension in the room had reached a palpable level. The lights dimmed, the applause swelled, and every eye in the room was now focused not just on the award recipients, but on the unfolding dynamics between two of the night's most scrutinized figures. Meghan had made her entrance, navigated the crowd, and tried to maintain composure. But the sense that the night would not go according to plan was undeniable. Every whisper, every glance, every calculated smile hinted at the drama that was about to unfold. It was clear to anyone paying attention that this was more than just an awards show. This was a stage for conflict, a playground for power dynamics, and a crucible where reputations would be tested in real time. Meghan, elegant and poised, was stepping into territory that required more than charm and diplomacy. It required resilience, strategy, and an understanding of a world that operated on entirely different rules than those of royalty. Jennifer Lopez, with her commanding presence, had already set the tone, subtly asserting dominance without overt confrontation. The night was set, the players were in position, and the stage was primed for a confrontation that no one in attendance would forget. And just when it seemed that the night might proceed like any other, a simple glance, a subtle shift in posture, and a word or two whispered across a crowded room would ignite the kind of spectacle that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and the private conversations of Hollywood insiders for weeks. Meghan was about to face a moment that would challenge everything she thought she knew about influence, power, and public perception, and the world would be watching. The moment Jennifer Lopez stepped onto the red carpet, the room shifted. It was subtle at first, an almost imperceptible ripple through the crowd, but anyone paying attention could feel the electricity. Cameras pivoted as if on their own accord, flashes ignited in rapid succession, and whispers of admiration cascaded like a wave through the venue. Jennifer wasn't just arriving. She was making a statement, and the statement was simple. This room belonged to her. Imagine it. Limousines gliding to a stop, the tires crunching softly on the stone walkway. Jennifer's heel touched the red carpet, and suddenly the world slowed down just for her. Every photographer, every journalist, every celebrity turned their gaze, compelled by something almost magnetic. Her gown, a shimmering masterpiece that caught the light with every movement, wasn't just a dress, it was a weapon designed to command attention. It hugged her curves flawlessly, the fabric catching the chandeliers above and refracting them like sparks of fire. Even the most seasoned A-listers couldn't hide their admiration. And then her eyes found Meghan. It was a glance that could cut through steel. Not harsh, not aggressive, but precise, like a masterful chess player assessing her opponent before the first move. Jennifer didn't need to speak. Her presence alone was a statement. She was in control, and she knew exactly how to assert her dominance. Backstage, Meghan's aides whispered nervously. Her publicist nudged her gently, reminding her to keep her composure. Stylists adjusted the gown for the third time. As if by magic, every seam needed perfection. But nothing could erase the feeling in the air. Jennifer Lopez had arrived, and the energy in the room had irrevocably changed. Every step Meghan took now felt measured, every glance calculated, every smile strategically deployed. Jennifer navigated the crowd with ease, acknowledging friends, exchanging pleasantries, yet never losing the air of authority that set her apart. There was no haste, no overt aggression, just a calm, controlled energy that seemed to bend the room around her. People instinctively made way, photographers adjusted their angles, and whispers of admiration turned into subtle commentary. "That's Jennifer," someone murmured. "She doesn't just enter a room, she owns it." The contrast between the two women couldn't have been more dramatic. Meghan, poised and elegant, exuded grace in a way that only royalty could. Jennifer exuded power in a way that only Hollywood royalty could. One was polished, calculated, and aware of centuries of tradition. The other was magnetic, instinctive, and commanding without effort. And as the cameras flashed, capturing the unfolding dynamics, the tension became almost tangible, a storm waiting to break. Guests began to notice the subtle exchanges. A nod here, a glance there, a whispered comment to a nearby ally. Everyone in the room could feel it. The unspoken competition simmering just beneath the surface. Who would command the room? Who would dominate the narrative? And who would leave the night with the upper hand? The stage was set, and both women were aware that the smallest misstep could shift the balance dramatically. Jennifer's entrance wasn't just about appearance. It was a calculated performance. Every movement, every gesture, every measured smile was part of a strategy she had honed over decades. She had learned to command attention without raising her voice, to assert dominance without confrontation, and to make the entire room feel her presence simultaneously. It was subtle, brilliant, and undeniable. Even the seasoned reporters, who had covered countless red carpet events, were captivated. Some whispered excitedly among themselves, "She doesn't just arrive. She announces herself." Meghan's gaze flickered, a fleeting shadow of apprehension crossing her features. She had faced scrutiny before, yes, and had handled public appearances with poise. But Jennifer's presence introduced a new layer of challenge. There was no overt hostility, no aggressive confrontation yet. But the weight of Jennifer's charisma, experience, and command was impossible to ignore. Every step Meghan took felt measured, as if walking a tightrope where balance could be lost at any moment. The cameras were relentless. Photographers jockeyed for positions, flashes illuminating the room like bursts of lightning. Every angle mattered, every pose was captured, every expression dissected. Jennifer moved with the ease of someone who had mastered the art of the spotlight, each step deliberate, each glance commanding attention. And in that moment, Meghan realized something crucial. This wasn't just an awards ceremony. This was a battlefield of presence, influence, and perception. And she was now on the front line. As Jennifer approached the media pit, reporters scrambled to adjust their microphones and cameras. Her presence alone was enough to draw attention away from other celebrities, and whispers of admiration and envy circulated instantly. She paused, posed effortlessly, and smiled. A smile that was both warm and knowing. There was a subtle confidence there, a quiet assertion that she was unshakable, untouchable, and fully aware of the power she wielded. And then, the subtle tension escalated. Jennifer's gaze scanned the room again, landing on Meghan with a precision that was almost surgical. A single raised eyebrow, a slight tilt of the head, a micro-expression captured by the ever-present cameras. It was enough to send a ripple through the crowd. Guests exchanged glances, some attempting to suppress smirks, others feigning nonchalance. The energy in the room shifted, a current of anticipation and speculation pulsing through every corner. Backstage, Meghan's aides whispered urgently. The stylist adjusted her gown again, as if the physical act could correct the emotional tension in the air. Her publicist leaned in, murmuring reminders to stay composed, to smile, to engage politely. Meghan nodded, maintaining her elegance, but the flicker of unease was unmistakable. Jennifer Lopez wasn't just present. She had set the tone for the evening, and it was clear that the balance of power had subtly, irrevocably shifted. Meanwhile, the crowd outside the main venue erupted with flashes, clicks, and excited chatter. Social media feeds began to light up with speculation. Did you see Jlo's entrance? She just owns the room. Meghan looks tense, something's happening. Memes, GIFs, and live commentary exploded within minutes, amplifying the anticipation for what was coming next. The stage was set not just in the room, but online, in real time, and across every social media platform imaginable. Every movement Jennifer made seemed to radiate authority. She didn't need to speak to be noticed. Her charisma, confidence, and mastery of presence created an almost magnetic force, pulling attention and energy in her direction. Even the most confident A-listers found themselves momentarily distracted, caught in the orbit of her aura. And as the night progressed, it became clear that Jennifer wasn't merely attending the Governor Awards. She was controlling the narrative, steering the story, and setting the stage for a confrontation that would be impossible to ignore. Meghan's approach to the red carpet, while elegant, now felt under pressure. Every step she took was accompanied by the unspoken awareness that Jennifer was in the room, watching, assessing, and subtly asserting dominance. There was no outright hostility yet, no verbal exchange. But the subtle energy, the quiet tension, and the commanding presence of Jennifer Lopez made it clear. This night would not be ordinary. And for Meghan, navigating this landscape would require every ounce of grace, strategy, and resilience she possessed. As the evening continued, the subtle choreography of the room, the exchanges, glances, and whispered comments, laid the foundation for the drama to unfold. Celebrities took mental notes, journalists prepared their stories, and the cameras captured every subtle nuance. Jennifer's entrance had shifted the narrative in a single moment, setting the stage for a confrontation that no one in the room, nor the millions watching online, would soon forget. And as Meghan scanned the crowd, as her pulse quickened and her carefully maintained composure began to feel the strain, it became evident. This night, this moment, would test her in ways no gown, no smile, and no amount of preparation could prepare her for. Jennifer Lopez had entered the room not merely as a guest, but as a force, an unstoppable presence that would redefine the evening entirely. The room was electric, but nothing could prepare anyone for the tension that crackled the moment Jennifer Lopez and Meghan Markle first exchanged words. It wasn't a public confrontation, not yet. But the subtle choreography of their interaction was enough to make the room hold its breath. Every glance, every tilt of the head, every carefully measured smile spoke volumes. This was more than small talk. It was a battle of presence, a silent duel unfolding in the most glamorous arena imaginable. It began innocuously. Meghan approached a cluster of A-listers, poised and smiling, ready to greet those she had known from previous Hollywood events and philanthropic endeavors. Cameras clicked as she waved, a perfect mixture of charm and calculated grace. Then Jennifer entered her line of sight. It was as if the room had contracted, a bubble forming around them that was filled with anticipation, intrigue, and a hint of underlying rivalry. The energy shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes flicked between the two women. Everyone sensed it. The first interaction was about to happen, and it would set the tone for the entire evening. Jennifer didn't rush. She approached Meghan with measured steps, exuding confidence and authority. Each movement was deliberate, each gesture intentional. There was no aggression, no need for loud proclamations. Her presence alone was enough to command attention. Guests nearby whispered to one another, "She's about to speak. Just watch." And then, the first words were exchanged. It started as a polite greeting, typical pleasantries expected at any high-profile event. "Hello, Meghan," Jennifer said, her voice smooth, confident, and slightly teasing, as though she already knew the room would notice. Meghan responded with a soft, measured smile and a formal acknowledgement, the kind of response that is meant to maintain composure, yet subtly assert presence. At first, the words seemed innocent enough, but beneath the surface, there was a tension that only insiders could detect. The room observed every nuance. Micro-expressions became magnified. Jennifer's slight smirk, Meghan's fleeting hesitation, the subtle raise of an eyebrow. All of these small cues spoke louder than any words. To the casual observer, it might have looked like two women exchanging greetings. To those attuned to the subtleties of power and presence, it was clear, a silent duel had begun. Jennifer, ever the strategist, continued with a controlled charm. She complimented Meghan's gown, noting its elegance in a way that could have been sincere or a subtle jab. Meghan, aware of the cameras and microphones, returned the compliment, but there was a tension behind her eyes that spoke volumes. Was it genuine appreciation, or a careful performance meant to maintain her dignity under scrutiny? The uncertainty added fuel to the room's collective anticipation. As the conversation continued, subtle humor and irony began to creep in. Jennifer made an offhand comment about the awards season, a remark that on the surface seemed innocent but carried an undercurrent of pointed observation. Meghan's response was equally measured, a delicate balance of charm and assertion. Both women were aware of the cameras, the audience, and the A-listers watching intently. Every word, every gesture, was magnified, analyzed, and interpreted. The tension escalated when Jennifer leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice in a way that made everyone nearby strain to catch the words. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, a soft tease, almost imperceptible, yet loaded with meaning. Meghan's smile remained, but there was a subtle tightening around her eyes, a flicker of unease that betrayed her inner reaction. The photographers captured the moment, unaware of the underlying psychological chess being played in real time. Audience engagement is key here. Imagine yourself in Meghan's shoes. You're poised, confident, experienced in public appearances, yet someone across the room carries a presence so commanding, so magnetic, that it unsettles even the most composed persona. What would you do? Smile politely, assert your ground, or attempt a subtle reversal? For Meghan, the stakes were higher than ever. Every decision could impact her reputation, influence, and perceived authority in Hollywood circles. And then came the first real spark of public tension. Jennifer's tone shifted subtly, still smooth, still charming, but with a hint of condescension. She made a playful comment about influence and attention, a remark that, to an outsider, could pass as casual humor, but to Meghan, it felt like a challenge. Meghan responded with polite laughter, but the room could sense the underlying battle. The cameras, of course, caught the laughter, the smiles, the exchange, but not the tension pulsing beneath. Analogies help illustrate the moment. It was as if two chess masters were meeting over a casual game, each move measured, each word a strategy in disguise. Every glance was a calculated play, every pause a tactic. The audience, both in the room and online via live feeds, could only sense that something monumental was brewing. The exchange wasn't about words. It was about dominance, perception, and who could control the narrative in the public eye. Insider anecdotes later revealed that even the A-listers nearby felt the intensity. Whispers circulated about the unspoken rivalry, comments about subtle digs, and strategic flattery. Some guests admitted to feeling like spectators to a high-stakes drama rather than attendees at an awards show. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Every observer knew that the first exchange was merely the opening move. Emotional spikes intensified when Meghan attempted a small gesture, a hand on Jennifer's arm, a nod of appreciation. It was a diplomatic move meant to diffuse tension, but Jennifer's response was perfectly calibrated. A subtle smile, a pause, a glance around the room that reminded everyone of her presence and influence. It was a masterclass in controlling space without aggression. Meghan's gesture, while well-intentioned, was absorbed and reframed by Jennifer's commanding aura. Direct audience questions heightened engagement. If you were in Meghan's position, would you attempt to assert dominance immediately or wait for the right moment? Would you risk confrontation in a room filled with some of the most powerful celebrities in the world, knowing that every move would be recorded, dissected, and amplified across media platforms? The stakes were immense, and the pressure was palpable. The tension crescendoed when Jennifer made a subtle, almost offhand comment about charisma, visibility, and attention. It wasn't overtly insulting, but the delivery carried the weight of a calculated psychological strike. Meghan's reaction, a careful smile mixed with a slight tightening of her jaw, was immediately captured by photographers. Social media would later explode with speculation about the tone, the intent, and the power dynamics at play. Memes, videos, and articles would dissect this exchange for hours, teasing out every microexpression and inferring meaning where it might not even exist. And just as the room thought the exchange had concluded, Jennifer delivered one final, seemingly casual line, an almost playful observation about influence, attention, and visibility that hung in the air like a loaded question. Meghan maintained her composure, but the subtle shift in energy was unmistakable. Everyone present sensed the escalation. The opening exchange was over, but the battle had only just begun. Backstage, Meghan's team whispered urgently. Notes were exchanged, glances shared, strategies adjusted. Even those familiar with high-pressure public appearances could feel the tension radiating from the interaction. Jennifer's approach had been subtle, poised, and precise, but it had left an indelible mark. The room's energy was now charged, ready to explode at any moment. And as Meghan retreated slightly, preparing for the next set of encounters, she knew that the night had irrevocably changed. The first exchange wasn't just a greeting, it was a declaration. Jennifer Lopez had subtly, expertly, and publicly reminded everyone in the room who commanded influence, presence, and attention. Meghan's response had been graceful, controlled, but it was clear the evening's drama was far from over. The first exchange had set the stage for what would become a night remembered not for awards or speeches, but for power, perception, and a public humiliation that would ripple across Hollywood, social media, and royal commentary for weeks. The tension hung thickly in the air, and every attendee, whether consciously or not, was now a witness to the psychological battle unfolding before them. The room was buzzing with energy, a mixture of excitement, nerves, and anticipation. The awards ceremony had officially begun, and yet, all eyes were on two women, Meghan Markle, the former Duchess, and Jennifer Lopez, Hollywood royalty incarnate. What had started as subtle glances and carefully measured words now escalated into something far more dramatic. This was no longer just a polite exchange. It was about to become a public spectacle, one that would dominate headlines and social media feeds for weeks. Imagine standing in a room filled with some of the world's most influential people. The chandeliers gleamed above, photographers' flashes stuttered like lightning, and every subtle movement seemed amplified. Meghan had prepared herself meticulously for this night. The gown, the hair, the makeup, even the carefully rehearsed small talk. But no amount of preparation could shield her from what was about to happen. Jennifer Lopez was about to humiliate her in front of the world, and everyone in attendance, and watching remotely, would bear witness. It started innocently enough. The ceremony's host began announcing awards, and Meghan found herself politely congratulating fellow nominees and mingling with the crowd. Jennifer, however, had a different agenda. She moved with deliberate confidence, her gaze sweeping the room until it landed squarely on Meghan. The subtle tension that had been building backstage now escalated into something tangible, almost electric. Every whispered word, every shared glance, every camera flash seemed to magnify the impending confrontation. Then it happened. During a casual conversation in the middle of the red carpet interviews, Jennifer leaned slightly closer, her tone deceptively light, her words sharp with calculated intent. She made a comment about visibility, influence, and perception, phrased as a playful observation but loaded with implication. "It's so interesting," she said, smiling, "how some people can walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention without even trying, isn't it?" The words hung in the air like a suspended challenge. To the untrained ear, it might have sounded like harmless small talk, but those who understood the subtle nuances of power immediately recognized the implication. Jennifer had just publicly suggested that Meghan was not in command of her own presence, that her confidence was perhaps performative, and that she lacked the natural charisma to hold the spotlight. In essence, Jennifer had humiliated her, and she did it with style, charm, and subtlety. Meghan's reaction was instantaneous, yet carefully contained. Her smile wavered for a fraction of a second, eyes narrowing ever so slightly, and she let out a polite laugh that didn't quite reach her voice. It was a delicate balancing act. Maintain composure for the cameras while managing the sting of a subtle public jab. Every A-lister nearby sensed the tension, and whispers began circulating. "Did you hear that? Wow, that was pointed. She just burned Meghan in front of everyone." The photographers, of course, captured every second. Meghan's polite laugh, the slight arch of her brow, the tension in her posture. All were immortalized in a series of images that would circulate endlessly online. Within minutes, social media exploded with clips and GIFs, every frame dissected and analyzed. Memes began to appear, one showing Jennifer smiling with the caption, "Queen of the Room," another of Meghan laughing with the caption, "Trying really hard." The public humiliation was complete, and the world was now watching, commenting, and taking sides. Adding to the emotional stakes was the reaction of the A-listers in the room. Some subtly smirked, some whispered to each other, others watched with wide eyes, sensing the power dynamics unfolding before them. Jennifer had demonstrated dominance without raising her voice, without confrontation. Her mastery of presence alone had shifted the entire narrative. Meghan, meanwhile, had been reduced, for that fleeting moment, to the role of observer, the one whose poise and elegance were now under subtle scrutiny. Backstage, Meghan's team scrambled. Stylists and publicists whispered urgently, trying to offer comfort, reassurance, or strategic advice. But nothing could undo the effect of a subtle public humiliation executed by someone as masterful as Jennifer Lopez. Every word, every glance, every movement had been designed to convey power, assert influence, and remind everyone in the room, including Meghan herself, who commanded the attention. And yet, the humiliation didn't stop with words. Jennifer's gestures, expressions, and controlled movements amplified the effect. A slight tilt of the head, a playful laugh, a casual glance around the room, all combined to subtly undermine Meghan's presence. It was the kind of public humiliation that didn't rely on shouting, confrontation, or drama. Instead, it was psychological, precise, and elegant, a demonstration of control that left Meghan momentarily destabilized. Audience engagement is crucial here. Imagine being in Meghan's shoes. Poised, confident, experienced in public appearances, yet confronted by someone whose presence alone commands attention, whose every gesture reinforces dominance, whose subtle words carry both charm and condescension. How would you respond? Would you attempt to reclaim authority immediately, or wait for the right moment to turn the tables? Every decision was now magnified by the cameras, the audience, and the scrutiny of millions online. The moment reached a crescendo during a brief pause in the conversation. Jennifer laughed lightly, a sound that seemed innocent to the casual listener, but carried a subtext that left Meghan momentarily speechless. A few attendees tried to intervene with small talk, but the tension was too thick. The exchange had become the focal point of the room, and Meghan's attempts to regain composure were noted by everyone, from Hollywood's elite to the journalists covering the event. Then came the subtle escalation. Jennifer, with the faintest smirk, offered a comment about influence and attention again, but this time it was directed toward Meghan's style, her presence, and the delicate balance between royal elegance and Hollywood charisma. "It's fascinating," she said softly, "how some people can command a room effortlessly, while others try very hard." The implication was clear. Meghan was trying, and she was failing, at least in Jennifer's estimation. The psychological weight of that moment was profound. For Meghan, the humiliation wasn't just in front of cameras. It was in front of her peers, industry leaders, and an audience that would consume every detail, every frame, and every nuance. For Jennifer, the act was executed flawlessly, a blend of charm, subtlety, and strategic dominance. The room was captivated, and the energy was palpable. Every guest could feel the tension, and the story had already begun to take on a life of its own, amplified by social media and whispered commentary. But even as Meghan maintained her composure, the emotional impact was undeniable. There was a fleeting sense of vulnerability, a crack in the otherwise polished exterior that she had carefully constructed over the years. Every gesture, every word, every glance had been scrutinized, and this moment, subtle, elegant, and psychologically precise, had been captured for the world to see. The humiliation was not loud, not aggressive, but it was complete, undeniable, and unforgettable. Insider accounts later revealed the impact of the public humiliation. A-listers admitted to whispering among themselves, debating Meghan's response, and speculating about how she would recover. The social media storm that followed was unprecedented, with commentary, analysis, and memes flooding feeds within minutes. The moment had transcended the awards ceremony, becoming a viral spectacle that would dominate conversations across Hollywood and beyond. And yet, the night was far from over. Meghan's humiliation was just the opening act. The subtle yet devastating psychological blow delivered by Jennifer had set the stage for a series of events that would escalate in ways no one anticipated. Backstage, the tension simmered, whispers circulated, and Meghan was forced to confront a reality she had never fully prepared for. In this room, presence and charisma were as powerful as titles, and tonight, Jennifer Lopez had reminded everyone exactly who commanded both. The public humiliation had been executed with precision, elegance, and subtlety, an unforgettable lesson in power dynamics, influence, and control. And as Meghan processed what had just occurred, she knew that this was only the beginning. The world had witnessed the first act, and now the real drama was about to unfold. The cameras had captured the public humiliation, the flashes had immortalized every expression, and the audience had gasped, whispered, and clicked their way into the unfolding drama. But what the world didn't see, and what no social media clip could capture, was the chaos erupting backstage. Behind the ornate curtains, away from the glittering lights and camera flashes, a different kind of storm was brewing. This was the private fallout, the raw and unfiltered aftermath of Jennifer Lopez's perfectly executed public humiliation. And Meghan Markle was at the center of it. Imagine the scene: a labyrinth of hallways, velvet ropes, and frantic assistants darting between dressing rooms. Stylists were running back and forth, adjusting gowns and calming nerves. Publicists were whispering in hurried tones, their faces tense, eyes darting to monitors showing the live feed of the red carpet. Security personnel paced like sentinels, aware of the heightened energy and the potential for disruption. In this controlled chaos, every second mattered, every decision was scrutinized, and the stakes had never been higher. Meghan entered the backstage area, her composure still intact on the surface, but her mind racing. The polite smile she had maintained on the red carpet felt fragile now, like a mask she had to hold in place despite the storm around her. Her team gathered immediately, surrounding her in a protective circle, whispering instructions and reassurances. "Keep calm," one aide murmured. "Everything is fine. Just breathe." But Meghan could feel the tension, the subtle charge in the air that told her this was no ordinary night. Jennifer Lopez's influence, though physically distant at the moment, still dominated the backstage atmosphere. Everyone knew what had happened on the red carpet. Clips were already circulating on monitors, showing the subtle, devastating exchange between the two women. Reporters and photographers had begun circulating backstage, eager to capture reactions, comments, and the human fallout of the drama. Social media managers were typing furiously, monitoring online reactions, and preparing to respond to any emerging narrative. Every professional in the area felt it. The story had moved from public space to private chaos, and Meghan was at the center of the storm. The chaos intensified when Meghan's stylist attempted to adjust her gown again, fearing that even the slightest imperfection could undermine her efforts to regain composure. The dress had been carefully selected for its elegance and symbolism, yet every wrinkle, every misalignment now felt catastrophic. Meghan's publicist leaned in closer, whispering strategies to regain control, manage the narrative, and prepare for the next round of interactions. "Stay poised," she said. "Smile naturally. Engage confidently. Don't give them anything to exploit." Meanwhile, Jennifer's team was operating with surgical precision. They had anticipated the impact of her public dominance and were now monitoring backstage reactions, ready to capitalize on every nuance. Photographers were strategically positioned, social media clips were being disseminated, and influencers were being briefed on the emerging narrative. Every move was coordinated, deliberate, and effective. Jennifer's presence was a force multiplier, amplifying the drama and ensuring that the evening's story would not just be remembered. It would be dissected, debated, and shared endlessly. Backstage conversations were a mixture of speculation, strategy, and anxiety. Celebrities who had witnessed the exchange whispered to one another, debating the intent behind Jennifer's words, the implications of Meghan's reaction, and the potential long-term consequences for both women. Some were amused, some sympathetic, and some strategically analyzing how this event might impact alliances, collaborations, and public perception. The energy was frenetic, unpredictable, and charged with anticipation. For Meghan, the psychological pressure was mounting. She had maintained composure in the public eye, but backstage, away from the cameras, she could feel the ripple effects of the humiliation. Her aides monitored the live feed, pointing out subtle details she might have missed: the tilt of Jennifer's head, the barely perceptible smirk, the energy in the room that had shifted subtly but irrevocably. Every micro-expression, every whispered comment backstage, reinforced the reality. This was not just a public moment. This was a calculated psychological battle, and Meghan had just been dealt a sharp blow. The assistants and aides worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation. Some tried to lighten the mood, offering small jokes or casual remarks to diffuse tension. Others were focused on damage control, scanning monitors, reviewing clips, and preparing talking points. Meghan's publicist reminded her that perception was everything, that her response could shape the narrative, and that the next moments would be critical. Every movement, every gesture, and every word now carried weight far beyond the immediate moment. And yet, despite all the efforts, the backstage chaos had an undeniable rhythm, a tense choreography that everyone seemed to follow. Stylists darted back and forth, adjusting gowns and hair. Security monitored entrances and exits, ensuring that no unexpected interruptions would exacerbate the situation. Photographers waited for a reaction shot, a crack in the composed facade, while journalists whispered behind closed doors, speculating about what the next encounter might hold. The tension was omnipresent, electric, and impossible to ignore. Then came an unexpected complication, a leaked social media clip. Someone backstage had captured a segment of the red carpet interaction and uploaded it in real time. Within minutes, it had gone viral, amplifying the humiliation and sending shockwaves through the event. Meghan's aides scrambled to respond, drafting statements, contacting journalists, and attempting to control the narrative. Meanwhile, Jennifer's team watched with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the impact of her subtle, calculated dominance had now reached a global audience. The psychological weight of the situation pressed on Meghan. She had faced scrutiny before, she had managed public perception countless times, but this was different. Jennifer's humiliation had been executed with elegance, precision, and charm, a combination that left little room for immediate rebuttal. The challenge now was not only to maintain composure, but to strategize a response that would reclaim narrative control without further exposing vulnerability. Audience engagement. Imagine being Meghan for a moment. You've been publicly undermined in front of hundreds of influential individuals, and social media is already ablaze with clips, memes, and commentary. Every choice you make, every gesture you display, is being analyzed, dissected, and judged. How would you navigate the chaos? Would you assert yourself immediately, or bide your time, waiting for the right opportunity to reclaim control? The stakes are enormous, and the pressure is suffocating. Amid the chaos, a few allies attempted to provide support. Fellow attendees who had witnessed the exchange discreetly offered words of encouragement or subtle signs of solidarity. But even these gestures were tempered by caution, as no one wanted to antagonize Jennifer or exacerbate the tension. The backstage environment became a delicate balance of loyalty, strategy, and careful observation, where every small action could shift the dynamics in unpredictable ways. As the evening progressed, the energy in the backstage area intensified. The anticipation of further encounters, the swirling commentary from A-listers and journalists, and the constant awareness of global attention created a pressure cooker environment. Meghan's team worked tirelessly to maintain stability, adjusting gowns, coaching her responses, and monitoring social media in real time. Yet, despite all efforts, the psychological impact of the public humiliation lingered. The event had become more than an awards ceremony. It was a stage for power, influence, and narrative control. Then came a whisper, a small but significant comment from one of the event organizers. "Be careful. She's watching. Every move matters now." That single statement encapsulated the tension backstage. Meghan knew that Jennifer's influence extended beyond the red carpet, beyond the cameras, and into every corner of the event. Every subsequent interaction, every movement, and every glance would carry amplified significance. Backstage chaos had reached a fever pitch. Stylists, publicists, and assistants moved in a coordinated frenzy, balancing preparation with damage control. Security maintained vigilance, ensuring that the intensity of the moment did not escalate into confrontation. Journalists observed with curiosity and anticipation, eager to capture every subtle reaction. Social media amplified the drama, spreading the narrative far beyond the confines of the venue. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle remained poised but internally aware. This was far from over. Every detail mattered, every second counted, and every whisper, glance, and gesture backstage was a precursor to the next phase of the night's drama. Meghan had survived the first public humiliation, but the chaos backstage revealed that this was only the beginning. The next moves would be critical, and the world, and Hollywood, would be watching every second. The red carpet chaos, the subtle jabs, and the backstage storm had passed, or at least, It seemed they had. But for Meghan Markle, there was no resting, no pausing, no time to breathe. The humiliation she had endured in front of Hollywood's elite was still fresh, its sting magnified by the ever-present awareness that every reaction, every micro-expression, had been captured by cameras and would circulate online in minutes. Social media was already buzzing with commentary, clips, and memes. The narrative was no longer hers to control. And yet, she knew she had to try. She had to reclaim some semblance of dignity, some measure of influence, before the night spiraled further out of her control. Imagine this psychological pressure. You've been subtly humiliated in public by someone whose every move commands attention, whose very presence dominates the room. Every celebrity in attendance has witnessed it, every journalist has captured it, and millions online are dissecting it in real time. For Meghan, the stakes were enormous. This wasn't just a social misstep. This was a challenge to her very persona, a question of whether she could maintain her presence under pressure and whether she could reassert control in a room dominated by charisma, influence, and unspoken power plays. Her attempted comeback began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Meghan moved with calculated precision, seeking opportunities to re-engage, to assert presence, and to reclaim some narrative control. She approached a group of fellow A-listers, exchanging polite greetings, laughter, and compliments, attempting to redirect attention and energy. But her movements were observed. Every step, every gesture, every word was scrutinized not just by the cameras, but by Jennifer Lopez and her team, who had established psychological dominance in the room. The challenge was not just visibility, it was strategy. Jennifer, ever aware, noticed the attempts. Her presence didn't waver, it intensified. She offered polite nods and subtle smiles, signaling acknowledgement without conceding any ground. To Meghan, every measured gesture was both a challenge and a reminder. Presence, confidence, and charisma cannot be feigned. They must be commanded. And in that instant, Meghan realized that reclaiming influence in a room like this would require more than charm. It would require ingenuity, timing, and tactical precision. The first attempt at humor came next. Meghan, sensing an opening during a lull in conversation, made a lightly self-deprecating remark intended to engage the group and draw attention back toward her. It was clever, well-timed, and designed to elicit laughter without confrontation. But the reaction was mixed. Some A-listers chuckled politely, while others exchanged glances, aware of the underlying dynamics and the tension still simmering from Jennifer's prior dominance. The room was a minefield. Every laugh, every pause, every nod could be interpreted as support or as subtle critique. Audience engagement. Imagine being in Meghan's shoes. You've been publicly undermined, your reactions amplified by cameras, your subtle expressions scrutinized by thousands online. Every attempt to reclaim attention feels like walking a tightrope over a pit of criticism and judgment. How would you navigate this? Would you push forward with confidence, or wait for the perfect moment to turn the tide? Meghan's choice was fraught with risk, and the consequences were immediate. She attempted a second move, engaging directly with Jennifer. Not confrontationally, not aggressively, but strategically, with charm and diplomacy. Meghan complimented a detail of Jennifer's outfit, a subtle gesture meant to acknowledge her presence while subtly redirecting attention. Jennifer's response was, predictably, perfectly calibrated. A polite smile, a nod, and a comment that maintained the balance of power firmly in her corner. Meghan had attempted a reassertion, but Jennifer's response had neutralized it without any overt confrontation. The subtle battle of influence continued as Meghan navigated the crowd. She sought allies, engaging with celebrities who could validate her presence and provide moments of reprieve from the subtle tension. Small gestures, a shared joke, a brief compliment, a laugh, were carefully executed, yet every interaction was layered with complexity. Each ally's reaction mattered, not just for immediate support, but for the long-term narrative that would be analyzed by the media, Hollywood insiders, and social media audiences alike. And then came a moment that could have shifted everything, a pause during the awards ceremony itself. Meghan was seated near the stage when a brief lull in proceedings allowed her an opportunity to reassert composure. She straightened, offered a poised smile to the cameras, and engaged in light conversation with a neighboring celebrity. It was elegant, measured, and seemingly confident. But even in this carefully choreographed move, the subtle shadow of Jennifer's earlier dominance loomed. Her presence, her aura, her prior psychological victories cast a lingering influence over the room, reminding everyone that power is not just about words or gestures. It's about perception, command, and timing. At this point, the psychological stakes intensified. Meghan's team whispered discreetly, providing pointers, reminders, and tactical advice. Maintain eye contact, project warmth, exude confidence, and avoid any misstep that could be magnified online. Every microexpression, every laugh, every gesture was now a strategic maneuver in a complex social chess game. The challenge was immense. How to reclaim influence without provoking another public blow, and how to navigate a room where charisma and dominance had already been claimed. Jennifer, observing from a distance, remained poised. Her gaze flicked toward Meghan periodically, a reminder of her presence and her subtle control over the evening's narrative. She didn't need to speak. Her confidence, composure, and command alone were enough to maintain influence. Every subtle glance, every controlled smile, and every graceful gesture reinforced the psychological hierarchy that had been established on the red carpet. Meghan's attempted comeback, while carefully executed, faced the uphill task of breaking through a presence that had been meticulously asserted. The tension continued to ripple through the room. Guests whispered among themselves, discussing the interplay between the two women, speculating about motives and analyzing reactions. Reporters typed furiously on tablets and phones, capturing the nuances of body language, inferring subtext, and preparing stories that would circulate instantly. Social media buzzed, teasing the